The July Crisis was a diplomatic crisis among the major powers of Europe in the summer of 1914 that led to World War I. Immediately after Gavrilo Princip, a Yugoslav nationalist, assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir presumptive to the Austro-Hungarian throne, in Sarajevo, a series of diplomatic maneuverings led to an ultimatum from Austria-Hungary to the Kingdom of Serbia, and ultimately to war. The assassination had been carried out by those wishing to unite all of the territories with majority South Slavic population not already ruled by the Kingdom of Serbia or Kingdom of Montenegro. Austria-Hungary's post-assassination ultimatum was a part of a coercive program meant to weaken the Kingdom of Serbia's threat to take control of the Northern Balkans and its significant Southern Slavic population, especially the Bosnian Serbs. This was intended to be achieved either through diplomacy or by a localized war if the ultimatum were rejected. Austria-Hungary preferred war, though István Tisza, the prime minister of the Hungarian part of Austria-Hungary, hoped that the ultimatum would be reasonable enough that it would not be rejected outright. A month after the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, thus initiating World War I. Assassination and investigation. Austria-Hungary had annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1908. Sarajevo was the provincial capital. Oskar Pošarek was the military commander and governor of the province. After Pošarek's suggestion, in summer 1913, that Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, heir presumptive to the Austro-Hungarian throne, might attend military exercises due to be held in Bosnia near the end of June 1914, Emperor Franz Joseph ordered Franz Ferdinand to attend. After the exercises, on 28 June 1914, Franz Ferdinand toured Sarajevo with his wife, Sophie, Duchess of Hohenberg, 6 armed irredentists, 5 Serbs and 1 Bosnian Muslim, coordinated by Danilo Ilić, lay in wait along Sarajevo's Apple Quay because it was announced that Franz Ferdinand's motorcade would use that route. At 10:10 a.m., Nedeljko Kabrinović bombed Franz Ferdinand's motorcade as it approached the Kumuria Bridge. 20 people were wounded, but Franz Ferdinand was unhurt. The bomb thrower had been instructed in Belgrade by Serbian Major Voja Tankarzic to take potassium cyanide to prevent his capture. Kabrinović swallowed the cyanide, but it only sickened him. The Sarajevo police arrested Kabrinović and brought him to the police first aid post. Investigator Judge Leo Pfeffer was at the police station and was immediately assigned to investigate. Before the investigation got far, news arrived that Gavrilo Princip had shot and killed Franz Ferdinand and Sophie while they were on their way to visit the wounded in the hospital. Princip took his cyanide, but the cyanide had the same effect on Princip as it had on Kabrinović. The police arrested Princip, and he too was brought to the first aid post. Within 45 minutes of the shooting, Princip began telling his story to Pfeffer. By the next day, the 29th of June 1914, based on the interrogations of the 2 assassins, Pošarek, governor of Bosnia-Herzegovina, was able to telegraph to Vienna that Princip and Kabrinović had conspired in Belgrade with Milan Ciganović and others to obtain bombs, revolvers, and money to kill Franz Ferdinand. A police dragnet quickly caught most of the conspirators. 25 people went to trial, but 9 were acquitted. Serbian involvement immediately following the assassinations, the Serbian ambassador to France, Milenko Vesnik, and the Serbian ambassador to Russia, Spalejković, put out statements claiming that Serbia had warned Austria-Hungary of the impending assassination. Serbia, soon thereafter, denied making warnings and denied knowledge of the plot. Prime Minister Nikola Pasic himself made these denials to Arizona Est on 7 July 1914, and to the Paris edition of the New York Herald on 20 July 1914. During the war, the former Serbian military attaché to Vienna, Colonel Lezanin, claimed that Prime Minister Pasic had ordered the Serbian ambassador to Vienna, Jovanović, to warn Austria-Hungary of the plot. but Jovanović carried out his instructions poorly. Requests for investigation, what Serbia ought to have done to prove her innocence and render it more difficult for Austria to hold her responsible for the crime, was to open a judicial inquiry into the possible complicity of Serbian subjects and take the necessary measures in that event. Albertini. Origins of the War of 1914. By the 30th of June, Austro-Hungarian and German diplomats began making requests for investigation to their Serbian and Russian counterparts. German Under-Secretary of State Arthur Zimmermann addressed these requests to ambassadors to Germany. The Austrian ambassador to Serbia made a similar request to the Secretary-General of the Serbian Ministry for Foreign Affairs, Slavko Grujic. Germany and Austria-Hungary were rebuffed. On the 5th of July, based on further interrogations of the accused assassins, Governor Pošarek telegraphed Vienna that Serbian Major Vojitan Karzic had given the assassins instructions. The next day, Austrian Ambassador Chenin approached Russian Foreign Minister Sazonov with the idea that the instigators of the plot against Franz Ferdinand needed to be investigated within Serbia, but he too was rebuffed. The last assassin, one last avenue of diplomacy and investigation lay open. The lone legal adult amongst the armed assassins was Muhammad Mehmed Basic. Following the assassination, Mehmed Basic fled to Montenegro, where he was arrested by the police. In Montenegrin custody, Mehmed Basic confessed to a wider conspiracy including an irredentist Serb terrorist planning meeting in Toulouse, France. Learning of the arrest but not of the confession, Austria-Hungary asked Montenegro to honor their mutual extradition treaty and hand over the assassin. After Montenegro shared Mehmed Basic's confession with the French ambassador, Mehmed Basic escaped to Serbia, possibly with the assistance of the Montenegrin authorities. Austria-Hungary receives German support and settles on coercive diplomacy with Serbia. The Hios Mission. From the 29th of June to the 1st of July, Austro-Hungarian Foreign Minister Berchtold and Chief of the General Staff Count Franz Konrad von Hotzendorf debated the appropriate response to the events in Sarajevo. Konrad initially advocated mobilization against Serbia. Berchtold opposed this, saying that public opinion must first be prepared. On the 30th of June, Berchtold suggested demanding that Serbia disband anti-Austrian societies and relieve certain officials of their responsibilities for their bad acts. Konrad continued to argue for the use of force. On the 1st of July, Berchtold told Konrad that Emperor Franz Joseph would await the criminal inquiry results, that Count István Tisza, Prime Minister of Hungary, was opposed to war, and that Count Karl von Sturge, Prime Minister of Austria, hoped that the criminal inquiry would provide a proper basis for action. Konrad continued to push for war but worried what attitude Germany would take, to which Berchtold replied that he planned to inquire of Germany what its position was. On the 1st of July, Viktor Naumann, a German journalist and friend of German Foreign Secretary Jagow, approached Berchtold's Chief of Cabinet, Alexander, Count of Hios. Naumann's advice was that it was time to annihilate Serbia and that Germany could be expected to stand by her ally. The next day, German Ambassador Czerski spoke to Emperor Franz Joseph and stated that it was his estimate that Wilhelm II would support resolute, well-thought-out action by Austria-Hungary with regard to Serbia. Berchtold previously had decided to seek a more direct statement of German intentions. On the 24th of June, Austria-Hungary had prepared a letter for its ally outlining the challenges in the Balkans and how to address them, but Franz Ferdinand was assassinated before it could be delivered. According to the letter, Romania was no longer a reliable ally, especially since the Russo-Romanian summit meeting of the 14th of June in Constanta. Russia was working toward an alliance of Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, Greece, and Montenegro against Austria-Hungary, dismemberment of Austria-Hungary, and the movement of borders from east to west. To break up this effort, Germany and Austria-Hungary should first ally with Bulgaria and the Ottoman Empire. To this letter was added a postscript on the Sarajevo outrage and its impact. Finally, Emperor Franz Joseph added his own letter to Emperor Wilhelm II, which closed with advocating the end of Serbia as a political power factor. Hios was dispatched to Germany to present these letters. The letters were presented to Wilhelm II on the 5th of July. Wilhelm II voiced his support for whatever action Austria-Hungary thought appropriate, but added that he needed to consult with Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg, who he was quite sure would have a similar view. The Foreign Ministry of the Austro-Hungarian Empire sent Ambassador Laszlo Zodoreny to Potsdam, where he inquired about the standpoint of the German Emperor on the 5th of July. Zodoreny described what happened in a secret report to Vienna later that day. Tel. No. 237 Berlin, July 5, 1914. Top secret. After I informed Kaiser Wilhelm that I had a letter from His Imperial and Royal Apostolic Majesty, which Count Hios delivered to me today to present to him, I received an invitation from the German Majesties to a déjeuner at noon today in the New Palace. I presented His Majesty with the exalted letter and the attached memorandum. The Kaiser read both papers quite carefully in my presence. First, His Majesty assured me that he had expected us to take firm action against Serbia, but he had to concede that, as a result of the conflicts facing our most gracious Lord, he needed to take into account a serious complication in Europe, which is why he did not wish to give any definite answer prior to consultations with the Chancellor. When, after our déjeuner, I once again emphasized the gravity of the situation, His Majesty authorized me to report to our most gracious Lord that in this case, too, we could count on Germany's full support. As mentioned, he first had to consult with the Chancellor, but he did not have the slightest doubt that Herr von Bethmann-Hollweg would fully agree with him, particularly with regard to action on our part against Serbia. In his opinion, though, there was no need to wait patiently before taking action. The Kaiser said that Russia's stance would always be a hostile one, but he had been prepared for this for many years. And even if war broke out between Austria-Hungary and Russia, we could rest assured that Germany would take our side, in line with its customary loyalty. According to the Kaiser, as things stood now, Russia was not at all ready for war. It would certainly have to think hard before making a call to arms. Nevertheless, it would attempt to turn the other powers of the Triple Entente against us and to fan the flames in the Balkans. The Kaiser said he understood full well that it would be difficult for His Imperial and Royal Apostolic Majesty to march into Serbia, given his well-known love of peace. However, if we really deemed a military operation against Serbia necessary, he would find it regrettable if we did not seize the present moment, which was so favorable for us. As for Romania, the Kaiser said he would make sure that King Carol and his councillors acted properly. The idea of entering into a treaty with Bulgaria is not at all agreeable to him. He did not have any trust in King Ferdinand or his previous or current councillors. Despite this, he did not want to make the least objection to a treaty between the monarchy and Bulgaria. But precautions had to be taken that the treaty did not contain any barbs against Romania and that this state was duly informed of the proceedings. Tomorrow morning, Kaiser Wilhelm intends to travel to Kiel before going on his northern voyage, but before this, His Majesty will confer with the Chancellor about the matter at hand. The Chancellor has been summoned from Hohenfernov to the New Palais in the evening for this purpose. In any case, I will have the opportunity to consult with the Chancellor tomorrow. On the 6th of July, Hios, Zimmermann, Bethmann-Hollweg, and Austro-Hungarian Ambassador Zodoreny met, and Germany gave its blank check commitment to Austria-Hungary of firm support. Policymakers compromise. On the 7th of July, the Council of Joint Ministers debated Austria-Hungary's course of action. The most hawkish on the council considered a surprise attack on Serbia. Count Tisza persuaded the council that demands should be placed on Serbia before mobilization to provide a proper, juridical basis for a declaration of war. The council agreed on putting harsh demands on Serbia, but could not reach consensus on how harsh. Except for Count Tisza, the council intended to make such harsh demands that their rejection would be very probable. Tisza held out for demands that, while harsh, would not appear impossible to meet. Both views were sent to the emperor on the 8th of July. The emperor's opinion was that the gap in opinion could most likely be bridged. An initial set of demands was drafted during the council meeting. Over the next few days, the demands were reinforced and made more ironclad and difficult for Serbia to accept. Serbia drifts. Eliacut on Descos, French ambassador to Belgrade, on the 1st of July reported home that the Serbian military party was involved in the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, that Serbia was in the wrong, and that Russian ambassador Hartwig was in constant conversations with Regent Alexander to guide Serbia through this crisis. The military party was a reference to Chief of Serbian Military Intelligence, Dragutin Dimitrijević, known more commonly as Apis, and the officers he led in the 1903 murder of the King and Queen of Serbia. These men had great influence in Serbia as their acts led to the installation of the current dynasty ruled by King Peter and Regent Alexander. Serbia requested and France arranged the replacement of Descos with the more hawkish Bopper, who arrived on the 25th of July. Hartwig died of a heart attack on the 10th of July during a visit to the Austrian legation in Belgrade. Austro-Hungarian attitude to war. In March 1914, Hungarian Prime Minister István Tisza wrote a memorandum to Emperor Francis Joseph. His letter had strongly apocalyptic, predictive and embittered tone. He used exactly the hitherto unknown Weltkrieg phrase in his letter. It is my firm conviction that Germany's two neighbors, Russia and France, are carefully proceeding with military preparations, but will not start the war so long as they have not attained a grouping of the Balkan states against us that confronts the monarchy with an attack from three sides and pins down the majority of our forces on our eastern and southern front. Tisza opposed the expansion of the empire on the Balkan, because the dual monarchy already had too many Slavs, which would further threaten the integrity of the dual monarchy. Those in the war party in Vienna saw the assassination as an excellent excuse to execute their 1912 plans for a war to destroy Serbia's ability to interfere in Bosnia. Berchtold used his memo of 14 June 1914, proposing Serbia's destruction, as the basis for the document that would be used to solicit German support. Count Franz Conrad von Hotzendorf, chief of the General Staff of the Austro-Hungarian Army, advised Berchtold that Austria-Hungary should cut the knot and declare war on Serbia as soon as possible. Councils were badly divided in Vienna, with Berchtold and Conrad supporting war. Franz Joseph I of Austria, though receptive to the idea of a war, insisting upon German support as a prerequisite, and the Hungarian Prime Minister Count István Tisza opposing a war with Serbia, stating that any war with the Serbs was bound to trigger a war with Russia, and hence a general European war. Austria-Hungary immediately undertook a criminal investigation. Illich and 5 of the assassins were promptly arrested and interviewed by an investigating judge. The 3 assassins who had come from Serbia told almost all they knew. Serbian Major Vojislav Tankarzik had directly and indirectly given them 6 bombs, 4 pistols, training, money, suicide pills, a special map with the location of gendarmes marked, knowledge of an infiltration channel from Serbia to Sarajevo, and a card authorizing the use of that channel.